Chapter 828. The autumn sunshine of South Korea shone through the thick curtains into Jeong Hai's bedroom. Feeling the sunshine, Jeong Hai also opened his eyes in a daze. Compared to the jet lag of most people, Jeong Hai was fine. When he opened his eyes, he also saw the women lying in his arms on both sides. These two women were the ones who made up their minds last night. Looking at the makeup on their faces that was ruined by tears, Jeong Hai also let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that he did not control the power from the primitive world last night. These two girls should have been tormented quite badly. After stretching his neck, Jeong Hai slowly pulled his arms out from under their necks, then took his clothes and left the room. After closing the door of the room, Jeong Hai couldn't help but scratch his head with a headache. To be honest, Jeong Hai was not interested in them at first. In fact, until now he still couldn't remember their names. Originally this matter was very simple. Jeong Hai didn't care who took the money from South Korea. He was determined to take the money. This was also the price they had to pay for detaining his plane. But now, after last night's incident, Jeong Hai really couldn't say anything. After all, he was not the kind of person who was so heartless that he would turn his face away after doing something. Therefore he was definitely going to lose this money. Although he didn't care much about the 30 million, he still felt some heartache when talking about it. "You're up." Watching Jeong Hai leave the room, Cheryl Lee, who had gotten up early, was sitting on the sofa in the living room at this time, watching a Korean drama. When she heard the sound of Jeong Hai opening the door, she also looked at Jeong Hai and said apologetically. She knew that because of her, Jeong Hai lost a lot yesterday. Although she had tried her best to make Jeong Hai happy last night, compared with real money, the bodies of the three women didn't seem to be worth it. "Oh, what are you looking at?" After rubbing his hair, Jeong Hai put on his clothes and sat next to Cheryl Lee. He was not in a hurry to wash up. He wanted to talk to her first. "I didn't see anything. I'm sorry about last night." Hearing Jeong Hai's words, Cheryl Lee decided to apologize to Jeong Hai. "It's okay, forget it. After all, I also got some benefits. If you really feel guilty, then take me out to play today." Looking at Cheryl Lee in front of him, Jeong Hai also said with a smile. Hearing Jeong Hai's words, Cheryl Lee was relieved. As long as Jeong Hai didn't blame her, that was the best. "I've already made the arrangements. We'll go to the South Gate first, then to Jingfu Palace and then to Tsinghua Terrace. If there's still time, we'll go to Ming Cave. After dinner we can go to Nanshan. It's very nice to take the cable car there at night. Then I'll organize a party at Bao Ting." As soon as they walked out, they saw Hua Li fiddling with the computer in the distance. "Oh, you're awake." Seeing the two get up, Hua Li also smiled and said to them, "Oh, hello, where are they?" Seeing Hua Li ask them, the two immediately nodded. Although they were not used to it, she still wanted to ask. After all, they didn't accompany them for nothing last night. "Oh, they have already gone out, but you can rest assured. Jiang Zhou told us that the people in the team are already in contact with the higher-ups of South Korea." Hearing her words, Hua Li on the other side also said, "That's good." Hearing Hua Li's words, the two women breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Jeong Hai kept his word, their sacrifice was not in vain. Thinking of their family and career, losing some other things was also acceptable, although it may become a permanent pain in their hearts. You have to be more open-minded. In fact, Jeong Hai is still a very good person. He also specifically told us that if you have any requests or troubles, you can tell him and he will help you solve it. Here, this is his phone number. If there is anything, you can contact him at any time. Looking at the two in front of her, Hua Li also handed over 2 business cards and said with a smile. After receiving the business cards, the two really didn't know what to do. This night, was it just for this thing? Thinking of this, the two couldn't help but smile bitterly, but they still put away the business cards, then nodded, put on their shoes and left the hotel. When they got into the elevator, the two women were a little numb. Jean Taeyeon was okay, she was just very sad, but Lin Yuner was still a little numb because she didn't know how to face her lover. She felt very dirty now, but in order to save her job and her family, she had to do this. Looking at her grief-stricken face, Jean Taeyeon sighed. She didn't know how to persuade her at this time. Things had already happened. The only thing they could do was to forget this as soon as possible. After all, Jeong Hai wouldn't stay here for long. As long as this matter was over, everything would be over. But there were many coincidences in the world. He wasn't someone you could just pass by if you wanted to. After learning that he had offended Jeong Hai yesterday, Li Xingji used all his connections and finally found out that Jeong Hai was staying at the Shilla Hotel. So he came here early this morning to wait for Jeong Hai, hoping to please Jeong Hai so that Jeong Hai wouldn't hate him. Unfortunately, he didn't come at the right time. Jeong Hai just left in the morning. When he wanted to ask Jiang Hai's floor in the lobby, the elevator just reached the first floor. When the two women saw Li Xingji in front of them, the two women were stunned. Li Xingji was also stunned. Early in the morning, his girlfriend's hair was a little messy, and her clothes weren't very neat. Li Xingji wasn't a child. Suddenly he felt that he seemed to be a little green. At this time Jiang Hai didn't know about this. Because after he ordered this matter, according to his thoughts, he shouldn't meet with the two women again. So he was still very happy in Seoul. Jiang Hai went to the scenic spots mentioned by Cheryl Lee. But to be honest, these things were just SOSO. The so-called South Gate was just a gate. What national treasure? There was really nothing to see. Gyeongbokgung was more or less a building complex. He could take a look at it. Cheongwadi wasn't allowed to enter, but it was the only place in Seoul where he could see the police. After looking around, Cheryl Lee took Jiang Hai and the others to eat a South Korean barbecue at noon. After eating the barbecue, they continued to stroll in the afternoon. But there weren't many places to visit. Chapter 829. Myeongdong was a landmark in South Korea in the eyes of many fans of Korean dramas. Because there were many Korean dramas that would be filmed here, the business street that was originally not very popular unknowingly became very popular. In Myeongdong, all the shops required waiters who could speak Chinese. These people were prepared for the Chinese tourists. It can be said that over the year, more than 80% of the transactions in Myeongdong were from Chinese tourists. There were very few Southern Caucasians who would come here to buy things. Compared to the South Gate and East Gate, the sales here were much higher. But there was an important problem. Other than some super department stores, the so-called luxury goods sold here were actually more of South Korea's local brands. The most famous foreign brand was Zara. Zara was a Spanish brand. To be honest, the Spanish people did not earn as much as Wuxia people. In Europe it was rare to find someone who could earn more than Wuxia. Of course, this was referring to the purchasing rate. There were not many young people who could earn more than 2,000 euros a month overseas. Of course, this was after tax. In China, there were not many young people who could earn more than 2,000 euros a month. After all, the starting salary in China was about 3,000 euros. So, the big brands in Spain were just SOSO. That was why not many South Koreans came to Myeongdong. Most of them were foreign tourists. Jiang Hai and the others strolled around the place and then left. Even if they were women, it was very difficult for them to have the impulse to buy things here. After all, Jiang Hai's family lived in the United States. What they bought there was cheaper than here and the quality was better than here. What was there to buy there? After walking around Myeongdong they went to Nanshan. Nanshan Park in South Korea was a landmark building. The most famous building was Nanshan Pagoda. This place was also popular because of Korean dramas and the like. But Jiang Hai came over to take a look. To be honest, there was nothing fun about this old park. The whole tower was only 200 meters high. Compared to the 500 or 600 meter towers in China, there was a big difference. And the whole Nanshan Hill, it was more accurate to say that it was a hill. Jiang Hai came from Ice City in the plains, but in his view Nanshan Hill was a hill, not to mention his friends from the south. But there were some diehard fans who liked this place very much. When Jiang Hai and the others went to play, there were people taking selfies everywhere. If you want to take a selfie, then take a good selfie. After all, this place was also a scenic spot. If you want to do something about it, then do something about it. Jiang Hai could only laugh at this. After walking around Nanshan Pagoda for a while, they went directly to the revolving Western restaurant on the 5th floor for dinner. Then Jiang Hai and the rest drove directly to Bayating. The so-called Bayating did not refer to a hotel or a building. It referred to an area. The city of South Korea was divided into areas at the beginning. Below the area was a cave. They did not understand why it was divided into caves, but this was how it was divided. Bayating Cave, compared to Myeongdong, was also a trendy distribution center. But compared to Myeongdong, which was mostly tourists, there were more local tourists in South Korea here. This was basically a place where the so-called elites and petty bourgeoisie gathered. In addition to the famous brands, there were many cafes, restaurants with specialties from different countries, beauty shops and so on. At the same time there were many South Korean companies here. It was normal to meet some celebrities here. But to be honest, it was not a big deal to meet a celebrity in South Korea because there were really too many celebrities in South Korea. They relied on this to push up their economy. In addition to these things, of course, there were also some high-end nightclubs and high-end bars. This was because during the day, the main customers here were fashionable women in their 20s. Where there were women there would naturally be men. Where there were men there would be demand. So when it was night time, the nightclubs here were also quite chaotic. Jiang Hai said that he did not like to go to nightclubs because he did not like to be too noisy, but he was still somewhat interested in the place arranged by Cheryl Lee. After the car was parked, Jiang Hai and the rest walked into the nightclub that Cheryl Lee had arranged in advance. As soon as they walked in, Jiang Hai was shocked by the lively atmosphere. He had to admit that the people of South Korea really like to go to nightclubs. Many of the dance songs were from South Korea. The musicians here also particularly liked to play electronic music and dance music. When Jiang Hai came, it was almost 10 o'clock in the evening. It was the time when people were having the most fun. Countless strangely dressed young men and women were doing their best to dance on the dance floor. Regardless of whether it was plastic surgery or not, Jiang Hai glanced around. The quality of the girls here was quite good. They had the face and the figure. When they danced, they might have been influenced by some girl groups, so their dance steps were quite forcibly withdrawing his gaze. Jiang Hai followed the waiter to the second floor. The private room booked by Cheryl was on the second floor. The private room on the second floor facing the stage was the one she booked. After they sat down, a waiter came over and asked them what they wanted. Although Jiang Hai did not like this kind of environment, he was still quite interested in drinking. So he ordered 2 bottles of wine, a lot of beer, a fruit plate, snacks and so on. If this woman knew that he was the one who asked Jiang Hai to bring her back yesterday, she would probably find trouble with him. Yes, if it's convenient, can you give me his phone number? Taking a deep breath, Coriana forcibly suppressed the anger in her heart and asked Cheryl Lee in front of her. Hearing her words, Cheryl Lee shrugged and gave her Jiang Hai's phone number. After getting Jiang Hai's phone number, she nodded gently. After thinking for a while, she went into the bathroom first. After tidying up and making sure that there was no problem, she went downstairs. Of course, she still had to be careful when going downstairs. After all, there were a lot of paparazzi here. She quietly went downstairs and got into a taxi. Then she called the number that Cheryl Lee had given her. In South Korea's Gangwon province, there was also a breeding ground for Han cattle. Jiang Hai did not like this kind of cattle. After all, it was just a cross between an ordinary European cattle and a South Korean cattle. However, since these people were willing to worship it, Jiang Hai could not say anything. After all, there were people in China who worshipped dogs. In this regard, Jiang Hai could only chuckle. After listening to them brag about 13 moves, they also explained their own intentions. They were going to build a new Han cattle breeding base in Jizhou Island. They were going to raise 1 million cows. Naturally, Jiang Hai was going to provide the feed for them. Unfortunately, Jiang Hai directly rejected them with a single sentence, so there was no more. My manor is only so big and the amount of grass produced is only so much. If you can get the grass from Do Feynman, Luke Shawn or John Malone, then I will sell it to you. After listening to them talk for a long time, Jiang Hai did not talk nonsense and directly refuted them. When they heard what Jiang Hai said, the South Korea people were a little confused. Li Shihuai and the others looked at Jiang Hai. They couldn't figure out what was going on. This was because this guy didn't play according to the rules. If they dared to go overboard, she would take them down with her. The sky gradually darkened. Unknowingly, it was already the time mentioned in the message. After the two of them gave a simple score, they went downstairs with cold faces. They got into the car that the company had specially driven to pick them up and went to the Shilla Hotel. Looking at the night view of Seoul, the depths of the two women's hearts were as dark as the night view. At this time, no one knew what the two women were thinking. On the other side, a woman who had a relationship with Jiang Hai was walking back to her home with a tired face. There was no anger in her eyes, only endless confusion. After all, Han Jiao was considered a goddess-like figure in South Korea. Naturally, she had earned a lot over the years. In Seoul, housing prices were actually quite expensive. Compared to the imperial capital, it wasn't much worse. In South Korea, most of the stars rented houses in Seoul. Here there was a division of long rent and short rent. That was another story. It had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. Most of the people who owned property bought houses in the remote areas of Seoul. However, Han Jiao was still an actress who was considered a national treasure in South Korea, so she didn't lack money. In Seoul they had their own standalone villa. Although it wasn't big, only about 150 square meters, the two-story villa was very exquisite. Like a walking corpse, she returned home. After opening the door, she looked at the empty house and leaned weakly against the door. Then she slowly squatted down and rubbed her face hard before she stood up. She looked around the house but didn't find any trace of her husband. Because of the argument the day before, Her daughter had been sent to her mother to help take care of her. The entire villa was unusually quiet at this time. After meeting with Jiang Hai in the morning, she walked around the streets of Seoul alone. She didn't know how to face her husband and her child. She was really afraid that after she returned, she would be suspected by her husband because she didn't know what to say. So for a while, other than wandering outside, she didn't have anywhere else to go. Powerless, she was like a rootless duckweed swaying back and forth on the streets of Seoul. But no matter how much she swayed, there was a time when she had to return home. Finally, she returned home at night. But when she returned home, she was still alone. Phew, it's over, isn't it? It's just a nightmare. But why is it that when I wake up from a nightmare, reality is another nightmare? Han Jia smiled bitterly and muttered to herself. Then she stood up and went to tidy up the house. Halfway through, she heard the door open. Han Jia's husband walked in from outside in a daze. After glancing at Han Jia, he didn't want to talk too much with his beautiful wife. After glancing at her indifferently, he turned around and walked into the room.